Hey everyone, welcome to the channel, and today I want to talk about gravel biking, adventure biking, and how crazy this has taken over the cycling world in the United States. My history with cycling goes back into the early 2000s when I was actively racing and partaking in tons of events all the time. And after, starting a company, having kids, I had almost a 10-year hiatus from cycling, and now I'm getting back into the cycling world, and I am learning a lot. And one of the things I'm learning a lot about is events, cycling events. So if I want to be active in some of them, I am currently seeking out, what type of event do I want to do? And it has been a whopper of a learning curve. If you guys agree and think just trying to figure out how to find what event to go to and what category to even compete in. If you guys are as confused as I am, please leave a comment down below. Let's continue this discussion in the comments because it is just crazy right now in the world of cycling. So I just want to give a little backstory. In the mid 2000s, I was actively racing in a couple of the Midwest cross-country mountain bike series, and at that point, a lot of states around the United States had their own state-run cross-country series where, there's maybe anywhere from 6 to 12 races a year in whatever state. And in my state, Minnesota, there was a Minnesota mountain bike series. It used to be called the Minnesota State Championship Series. And every year they had, a solid 8 to 10 or 12 races. And then right next door in Wisconsin, there was the Wars series and had a solid, 8 to 10 or 12 races as well. And they were big events. You had a huge turnout, and every year, you knew that there was going to be a set schedule of events, and you knew that you could rely on going to those events. And the cool thing back then, all of those cross-country race series were, for the most part, sanctioned by USA Cycling. And that's just because that discipline of cross-country mountain biking is an Olympic sport, and I'm assuming that's why they were able to be sanctioned under USA Cycling. So it was a very organized way to race. And if you wanted to find cross-country mountain bike races to compete in, it was pretty easy to find those. And the biggest thing is, okay, you find an event that you want to go to, and the question is, okay, what category are you going to race in? And back then, it was very cut and dry, very simple. There was essentially if you go by USA Cycling standards, it's like Cat 4, 3, 2, 1, and Pro. But in layman's terms, like in Minnesota, it was basically sport, comp, expert, and then Pro would race with the expert or elite. And in the Wisconsin series, it was very similar. So you knew if you went to a cross-country event and you wanted to be in the most competitive level at that event, you were going to try and race in the Cat 1 Elite Pro race, because that was the pinnacle of races for the day. It was going to be that Cat 1 Elite Pro race. And over the years, I've noticed, I've been looking at results over the last several years in a lot of these cross-country series, and I'm noticing there's been quite a decrease, at least in the elite levels, of people attending these races. And I'm assuming that's because people are moving to the endurance adventure cycling side. So here's my theory, and guys, this is an opinion, so bear with me. This is totally my opinion and hypothesis on this entire issue. But what I'm trying to get to is gravel cycling kind of came into fruition after 2010. That's when I started noticing gravel rides and races becoming a thing, 2010, 11, 12, 13. They were starting to become a bigger thing. And a big thing where we were from in Minnesota, people were really leaning towards these gravel races because they were kind of bored with the cross-country races that were the same events year after year, sanctioned by USA Cycling. So it was a fairly cut and dry event that, like, if you raced it for 5 years in a row, you might not want to do the series anymore because you're just kind of bored of doing the same races. But let me tell you, like, Minnesota and Wisconsin mountain bike series are awesome. They're organized so well. And I encourage anyone who's getting into the sport of mountain biking, especially cross country, to attend those events because they're just, it's like just so cool. But getting back to this, so we have gravel cycling coming into view. And my theory is that, yeah, people kind of were getting bored with mountain biking. And the other thing you got to think, if you're spending money and time and you're sacrificing almost your whole weekend to attend a race, these cross-country mountain bike races, depending on what category you're in, they're usually, you're not racing for more than 2 hours. The Cat 4 and 3, they're going to be around an hour race. And when you get into the Cat 2 and Cat 1, then you're looking at an hour and a half to 2 hour races. So they're pretty quick. So you're driving all the way across the state. Some people are traveling, 5, 6, 8 hours to get to a race, and they're only riding their bike for a couple hours, and then might have to fund accommodations to stay the night before they drive back home. So it was kind of, in my mind, I saw why people were into the adventure racing, because it's like, well, if I'm going to sacrifice my weekend, I'm going to spend X amount of money to stay somewhere, I should get the best bang for my buck in terms of the adventure and experience I'm going to have while I'm on this trip this weekend. And I think that's why gravel riding and racing is so huge, is because, you're not just doing a 3-mile loop on a cross-country mountain bike race where you're just doing the same loop over and over at a ski resort or at a bike park or whatever. The gravel races are, you're on your bike all day or a heck of a lot of time, and you're experiencing a new view, new scenery. You're experiencing a whole new part of, the state or country that you've traveled to. So it's more of an I can see how it's more of a fulfilling experience, because you're getting this cool new experience. You're traveling to this new space, and you're pushing your body to levels that are kind of beyond what you normally would think you can do. And it's kind of an enlightening experience. So I can see why people were really into it. So fast forward almost 10 years to today. Now, granted, I was out of cycling in 2013. That was my last year that I raced. And I'm getting back into the cycling world 10 years later, after starting a company, having kids. And I'm finally like, man, I have time to ride bike again. Let's get back into this. So the thing that I'm noticing is how confusing it is to figure out what to compete in at a gravel race. First of all, how to even find them is one challenge. But then when you actually dig into an event, you find their website or their Facebook page or however they're promoting this event, trying to figure out which division to ride in. It's really common to see maybe like a 50-mile option, an 80-mile option, and then there's usually like a 110 or 120-mile option, and then sometimes a 165 or a 350-mile option. And obviously that crazy long distance that is, for like the crazy endurance bike packing dudes and dudettes who are just going for a crazy adventure. The question is for the weekend warriors who actually want to compete at a high level in a race and be in a really competitive race. The question is, okay, what division is the most competitive race? Obviously, it's not the 350-mile one. So is it the 160-mile race, or is it the 100-mile race, or is it the 80-mile race? And, rewind back to Minnesota and Wisconsin cross-country mountain bike series, you knew exactly which race to compete in if you wanted to be in the most competitive race against the most elite competition. Gravel riding, most of these are not sanctioned by any body. I mean, you have Lifetime Grand Prix, but that is like a totally different beast. And when you're wanting to attend local gravel events, or even like bigger gravel events that are kind of the bigger ones in whatever state you're in, It's just really confusing to newbies. Maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And if you guys know the secret formula to figure out the most competitive division to race in when you guys are signing up for a gravel race, let me know in the comments, because I literally have no idea. And it's kind of been one of those things where you're like, okay, people started gravel riding because they wanted something different. They wanted something that wasn't controlled by some governing body. And it was like our unique way to rebel in the cycling and racing world. And it is still like that today. And here's the thing, is that it's kind of, the downside of that is just the confusion. It's hard to find races. It's hard to find the correct division to race in. And the other thing is that, you know, when they keep, a lot of these races are adding crazy distances. And when you have a race like Unbound, that the most competitive race is the 200-mile option. I mean, let's be real. Not a lot of normal humans have time to train to be at a competitive level for a 200-mile race. You know, it's somebody with a 9-to-5 job. Yeah, they can train to do a 100-mile race and be fairly competitive. You know, you can get in a couple of long rides on the weekends to train for that 100-mile race. Train for the 200-mile race at a elite competitive level is going to require 8, 10-hour, 12-hour rides, you know, and you cannot have a full-time job and do that. If you can, let me know who you are in the comments, because you are amazing. But like, as a normal human, I don't know how you can do that without having a sponsorship from a large sponsorship to basically fund your training routine. So the thing that I'm concerned about is how gravel adventure racing is getting to a point now where it's just confusing. And if the most competitive level is that 165 200-mile race, I think that might turn a lot of people away, especially people looking to do a competitive race. Obviously, people just getting out and doing the adventure riding and trying to enjoy their weekend doing some awesome riding and sightseeing, like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, they'll go and ride whatever distance. But for these guys who really want a competitive weekend and to get their money's worth out of their travels and everything, I think it could kind of turn people away if there's no definition of like categories within gravel races. But that's just kind of my opinion. If you guys have better ideas, or maybe there is a resource that I don't know about, let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk about this topic further, but that is just kind of my personal opinion of what I'm witnessing from a total like outsider perspective, because I've literally been detached from this for almost a decade. So yeah, one thing that I think could improve is a more focused, I don't know if we call it a governing body, but like something out there, some type of league or something. If all these races aren't sanctioned by USA Cycling, maybe there's some type of league that, you know, gravel races can kind of be a part of and have consistent categories. You know, just like how USA Cycling has category 4, 3, 2, 1 pro, having similar categories like that for gravel riding instead of just vague distance numbers, because it's just very confusing. But anyway, I rattle on. I am going to be doing gravel races this summer. I have no idea if I chose the right category or not, and I don't really care. I just want to get out there and ride. I know I'm not going to be on the podium of any of these rides or races, but I hope to have a good time. I hope to get my fitness up and just push myself at a limit that I normally wouldn't if I were out on my own riding. So I hope you guys have a great season. Let me know your plans for the season too down in the comments, and we will see you guys next time. Have a great one and ride on. See ya.